Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining me for another video. Joe here with Tufel Gun and Armory, and today's video is going to be our fifth and final assignment for FTH 212, which is the striker-fired subcourse of the Handgun Specialist curriculum at Sonoran Desert Institute. Today is March 18th, 2026, right around 6 p.m., and we're going to be doing a bunch of things today. This will be heavily cut and edited. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment box below. Also, hit that subscribe bell. It's the best way we go together. With that being said, first things first, got to do safety. There's no live ammunition anywhere in the workspace. The feed source is clear, and the chamber has been visually and physically inspected, and there is nothing in this firearm. It is safe to work on. So the first part of this video is to discuss the trigger feel, state the pull weights, and share my thoughts. The pull weights, out of the 5 pulls, I got an average of 6, which isn't terrible. My concern is with the feel, and there's a ton of play with this trigger. I don't really like it. I'm definitely looking forward to see as we progress through this video how it changes. But starting out, you have a ton of play, and it's super spongy right here. It's not terrible, but we're going to see throughout this video with the different upgrades, the springs, the connector, and polishing and whatnot, if how it changes, and see where we end up at the end of this video. All right, so here are the marked surfaces. You have some marking right here on the top of the cruciform where the striker drags and where the trigger bar connects to the connector. These are areas that we have to focus on. Another one that I'm going to lightly polish is the slide stop. You have some, I didn't even need layout dye to see that because it already had kind of a finish on it, but you can see where it's been rubbing there. So that's that. So stoning versus polishing. For the most part, general polishing does the trick. There are some areas, like the inside of the connector, for example, that the metal is actually bent, and it's manufactured that way to operate that way. However, when you bend metal, it can create microburrs, kind of like a bendy straw, that you'll have those microburrs dragging against other components that operate against it and inhibit how smooth it works. So you can use stones to clean up the shape, not change the shape, but clean up the shape that's already there. That way it will assist in that smoother motion and smoother operation. So how do you determine whether to actually remove material or just polish? And it comes down to safety. You obviously, from a professional standpoint, you don't want to render somebody's firearm unsafe, a customer's firearm unsafe, and therefore doing things to increase the liability of that firearm you should probably avoid. So changing the angle of the sear and the striker lug, or removing material from them to make it to where it doesn't have as much contact as it should, that's probably one of those things you should avoid removing material from. But it can do well with a nice polish, and leave the stoning and whatnot to more non-critical areas that you can make larger adjustments on and clean up. One thing I forgot to mention when determining whether to stone or polish something is the interaction of the parts themselves. You could have rub marks on one component, and that's not the component that's actually causing the rub marks. For example, here and the connector, odds are it's going to be a combination of the two. But here on the cruciform, it's probably the striker lug that's causing that gouge, because the striker lug actually has kind of a concave bottom to the lug. So when it breaks that engagement, it's dragging with that lowest part. So that's just another thing to keep in your mind. All right, now we have the components polished. You have your loading block polished where it meets the trigger. You have the center of the trigger bar itself. The connector. Terrible lighting. But the connector, and then the different parts on the trigger bar. Right here. The cruciform. Just polished. And right here, that meets the connector. So now we put it back together. After the polishing job, I've reassembled the firearm and taken new trigger pull measurements. We are now averaging 5¼ pounds, where we were averaging 6 pounds prior to the polishing job. The difference is in the feel, just to show it's clear. You definitely have a lot smoother transition from no activity on the trigger to the wall. It's not as spongy and springy, as well as overall being a lighter trigger. It feels a ton better, and it feels like there's a more defined wall as a result. All right, y'all, I'm back. The firearm is still clear. There is nothing in it. For this segment of the video, we had to replace a bunch of parts. We got a new trigger spring, which was installed, a new safety spring that was installed. We got a new connector that was installed, and several different weights of striker springs. So put everything in. As far as the striker spring, I went with dead center in the middle, which was the 4-pound spring. And when I put it all back together, I couldn't pull the trigger, which made it a real pain in the rear to get it back apart, to do trial and error. Got it back apart, took out the connector and put the factory one back in, and I could pull the trigger, but I was having intermittent, about every third trigger pull resulted in a failure to reset. And so I disassembled it again, put the 4.5-pound striker spring in, and now it is working reliably. And with that being said, the trigger pull weights that I was receiving, I got 3 4.75 and 2 5.0, so it puts it somewhere right in the 4.8 to 4.85 pound range. That feels great. I am going to do more research on this. There is some minor fitting that is required. I guess you have to file down something on here in order to make it fit correctly, from what I am seeing on Ghost's website. It is not a drop-in part, so just be wary there. As far as any other trigger modifications, don't really feel it's necessary, nor would I do any. It's light, the trigger pulls quick, and it feels great. It would, at this point, pass any kind of safety inspection. However, if you were to do other modifications, it would not, probably, depending on what you were doing. There's no way to know for sure until you actually do those. I feel like definitely going any lighter than the 4.5 pound for the striker spring would result in negative performance, based off of the experience I had doing this project with the intermittent failure resets. So that covers this project. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them in the comment box below. Also, remember to hit that subscribe bell. It's the best way we grow together. My name is Joseph Marshall with Gun and Armory, and I'll see y'all next time.